Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me just say that we get it. Personal development can be hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Project Endure has been on a mission to create a supportive and inspiring community of people, all striving to be better together. Head down to the link in the show notes and join the Hard Things Club so that we can do hard things together. And if you're already a member, invite a friend and spread the love. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 193. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in Nova Scotia, Canada, we have a very, 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 very special guest, Paula Shrock. Paula, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. What's your weather in Philly?
It is 65 and sunny. How about you?
You know, I don't know the temp, but it's another gorgeous fall day here. The leaves are in full array.
So we were just in Nova Scotia visiting you, and I guess a little bit of background for people listening to this podcast, and then I'll have you introduce yourself. So my wife, Michaela, is your niece, and you and your husband, Brian, and your three children live in Nova Scotia, Canada. And it was just 2 weeks ago that we were with you guys visiting and driving all around, looking at the changing tree colors and the water and the cliffs. It was beautiful. And we had such an amazing time. And so I'm really happy that we're doing this podcast.
I am too. It was fabulous having you guys up here and especially getting to know you better. So it was great.
Likewise. Now, I will say this. I told Michaela when we flew back that you might be one of the funniest people I've ever met. I mean that.
What did Michaela say to that?
Michaela agreed with me. She agreed with me. You have a very particular sense of humor, and I don't think that you try. It's just who you are, and it's funny, but also you're very real, and you'll say it how it is, and you speak your mind, and I really appreciate that. And so, without further ado, let you introduce yourself to people listening.
Wow. Okay. Wow, where do I start? A lot of times we start with what we do. So I don't know if what I do is who I am. I'm trained as a clinical social worker. I last worked at Pennsylvania Hospital in Philly while Brian, my husband, was finishing his master's at Bryn Mawr. Then we signed up for a 2-year term with MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, to come up to Nova Scotia to help start a community-based counseling program. And I have to admit, we both had to look up Nova Scotia on the map. As Americans, I'm sorry, we did not know where it was. And we joke that it was supposed to be a 2-hour tour. And now it's been 31 years. We now have 3 Canadian kids. And we are still here. I still think of myself as an American, but I'm also Canadian. Like I said, I'm married, have 3 kids. All 3 kids are in their 20s. And what else can I say? I'm not sure. That's me.
That was great. And we'll get to know you more as I start to ask some other questions. But, one of the things that made me want to have you on the podcast, and I think I might have initially thrown out this idea even a few years ago, is because we share something in common, which is we both have a struggle related to our eyes, and they're very different struggles, but that commonality of, losing sight and navigating that world is similar. And so I'll just ask you the first big question, and you can tell me if this is your answer. When you look at your life to this point, What's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you didn't get to choose for yourself?
Um, there's a couple of things in life that I didn't sign up for, but 7.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with ocular melanoma. I was getting these squiggly lines in my eyes. And so I scheduled a eye appointment with my optometrist in between two appointments. It was just down the street. Thought I'll run down there. And I really thought it was a prescription update. And it wasn't. It was a tumor in my eye. And I can talk about my journey through that. But you hear the cliche, in a moment your life changes. But for me, cancer um, is one of those words that in a heartbeat, everything changed. So without a doubt, my challenge is still ongoing. It comes and it goes. It's back again in full force. So we're throwing everything at it that we can. Um, but yeah, cancer, as the bumper sticker says, I won't say it, but it sucks.
Yeah. If you can, when you first got that news, do you remember the flood of emotions that you experienced?
Well, you're kind of numb. You're kind of like you're watching things in slow motion. But the optometrist sent me over the same day to the ophthalmologist. Um, and my first thing out of my mouth is, I don't want to die. I don't want to die, because ocular melanoma does not have a good prognosis. Um, and we can talk about it later. Um, but fear, I'll get choked up thinking about this. Fear is so wrapped up in doing hard things, managing your fear, not letting your fear take you to dark places. I think I deal even 7.5 years later with managing my fear.
Mm. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius that I had pulled up before we started talking because I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. And so he said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
I just read that. You sent that out. It's really true. Actually, when I read that quote, it made me think. I listened to a podcast by Dr. Gupta, and he talks about different things. And the one thing they're doing research on is managing long term physical pain. And they're now exploring how much of that is tied up into our brains and how we think and we manage the how we deal with the pain psychologically. And I know I'm probably not doing the research justice, but it basically said the people that are learning how to choose how to deal with their pain cognitively are seeing vast improvements. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, but it makes me realize again that we have control over how we respond to the pain, the fear, whatever it is.
Yeah. How has it been navigating all of this yourself, being that you've spent a career helping other people navigate things like this?
Um, I think the thing that jumps out at me is the caring and the compassion of healthcare workers. I counted, I think I've had 40 plus different doctors, countless residents, countless fellows, nurses, and there are people that have chosen to serve people. And when they treat you with dignity and respect and kindness in your most vulnerable time, I think that's what I think about. It's what it's like now to be on the other side of the seat and to be treated well.
Hmm. That's really beautiful.
I often think some things I would do differently now as a clinician. I'm not working right now, but I think about how I would probably not be so quick to give answers. Um, I think how I would do my clinical work differently now than maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah. I guess everyone is struggling with something. And even if everything looks fine on the surface, you just never know. And for you, right, you have, I guess you would call it a prosthetic eye or what would the term be?
Yeah, that's a good eye. It's a prosthetic eye. So when I first had cancer, I went to Toronto and they call it plaque therapy, and it almost looks like a little bottle cap from a bottle cap, and they put a lot of radiation in there, and they attach it to your eye. And so I was good for. They left that on for a week and then took it out. I was good for a year, and then it came back, and we opted to have it inoculated. And so, if I can gross people out, it's a fake eye.
Now,
I'm sorry. What was the question?
well, there wasn't much of a question, but I wanted to get the terminology right. And I wanted to say, when we were spending the week with you, I went back and forth in my mind over and over and over again. And I kept thinking, which one is her real eye and which one
Thank
should I
you.
yeah. And so on the surface, my point is people wouldn't know meeting you for the first time in passing that you are dealing with such a hard thing. And I think it's a good reminder to be extra empathetic and compassionate and kind and gentle because you just don't know what someone's going through on any given day.
Obviously, I lost my left peripheral vision, and I've trained myself now as I'm driving to turn my head. But in the grocery store, my kids are always grabbing me and pulling me back. I've walked into so many people, and I had made up my mind that if anybody was mean to me, I was going to whip out my eye and say, I only have one eye. But nobody's done that yet. But I'm all prepared to do that, but I don't know if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, that's the sense of humor I was referencing earlier.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so okay, let me ask you this on a more serious note, and it's okay if you don't want to answer this, but you said one of the first thoughts you had is I don't want to die. And I would imagine that that thought can cross your mind from time to time, if not often. How do you manage that thought of just knowing that you're fighting this thing that, it's a hard battle and it could end with you not being here?
Right. Well, I have stage 4 cancer, right? Um, and this goes back again to fear. It is on the peripheral of my mind nonstop. Um, I have to really fight it. Like this past weekend, we had the most amazing weekend. Uh, the whole family except for me ran various levels in a race, and it was just one of these kind of magical weekends. Everything went really well, and as I was packing up to go home, my first thought was this really special because this will be my last Thanksgiving with my family. And I have to just stop. I just have to stop my head from going there because you can just go to the what ifs. What if this is my last Christmas? What if this is my last um, Thanksgiving? And I, one of my favorite quotes is by Frederick Buechner, and he says, "Here's the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid." And so that's my challenge in a nutshell: is to embrace the beautiful things like this weekend, knowing that sometimes the stories don't end well, and to not be afraid. That's
Mm,
it in a nutshell for me.
mm. I appreciate you sharing that. And, I think what you're fighting is obviously specific to you in a lot of ways, but I think there are a lot of things that people deal with that, involve fear, involve anxiousness, involve thinking about what ifs in the future. And I'd be curious, right, if somebody listening was going through something similar or different and they were worried about the future, what would you guide someone who's worried about the future to maybe do, or how to handle that?
Anxiety is very real in our world, in our lives. Um, and anxiety always takes us to our worst fear. And it's always reflecting on the past or in the future. And so being grounded in the present is always the best. I don't know what'll happen tomorrow, right? I know that cognitively, but it's really hard not to think about the future. And so what I would say is attempt to live in the present. Enjoy that weekend and don't think about I don't mean avoid it, but just live in the present and enjoy that. I know it sounds overly simplistic, but that's really what mindfulness is mindfulness is staying in the present. And that is so hard because you last 3 seconds and you're like, oh, I need to call about an oil change, right? And then, or whatever. Staying mindful is tough work. It's a discipline.
Mm. So there's a quote that I love from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and
Yeah.
I thought of this when I was in Canada with you guys, because I wouldn't be honest if I said I didn't think about what you just said, that there's, a chance that this could be your last something, right? And um the contrast of that thought with how present you seem to be was really inspiring to me, and it made my time with you guys really special, to be honest.
Mm.
We played this game on the trail when we were hiking in Cape Breton, and it was, each of us had to greet the next oncoming hiker starting with the next letter of the alphabet, and you got stuck with the letter X, and you just took it in stride. You went up to this random stranger and you said Xavier, as if you knew him, and then you played it off as if you had made a mistake, and we kept walking. It was just so, I'll remember that forever, because I thought about that moment in contrast to the darkness of maybe your situation, the weight of your situation, and how you were able to just be there in that moment. So anyway, the quote is, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. And it was really cool to see your light shine from within.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
My daughter is always trying to get me to play games, and I never do. I'm like, nah, right? And one of them said, we're going to play that game where you do this alphabet. And I was in the very back, and I thought, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I had totally was not going to play. And then I realized I was the only one, and I didn't want to look like that person. So I have to say, I went into the game grudgingly.
Um, Well, you stepped into it as it went on, and it was a great memory.
That's
And
fun.
yeah. And so, with all that being said, what does the battle look like for you these days, just in practical terms, and in fighting the cancer, and what does life look like on a day to day for you?
It really depends how I feel. I've been doing immunotherapy for a couple of years, but we think the immuno has stopped working. So they did some radiation in some of my bigger spots, and now I'm getting. It's called. Oh my gosh, I just drew a blank. Where they basically shoot immunotherapy directly, targeted therapy. But they do make me sick. But I've been really fortunate that I have not had to have chemo. So this was the first time that I was, leaning over the toilet puking in 7 years. And then I'll have a scan in a month, and I think we'll decide at that point what direction it's going. Um, Anybody who has any kind of illness or whatever has some anxiety going in for, I mean, even now, me going in for an eye exam, I'm anxious, right? any kind of appointment or scan just brings profound anxiety. And I don't think I'm alone. You know, my husband's been incredibly patient, and he's an optimist. So when I'm like, I'm done, he'll say, Paula, we're not there yet. And a couple years ago, he did a bike ride for a fundraiser for the hospital in Toronto that does eye ish things, Princess Margaret Rose. Anyways, he rode his bike from the tip of Nova Scotia to the top of Nova Scotia. I think it was, don't tell him I can't remember. Is it 800 kilometers? Anyways, in one of his posts, he talked about hope. Hope is a really funny thing when you're dealing with hard things, because you want to be realistic, but you also want to hope. And I'm going to read to you another quote that I had on my Instagram a couple months ago. And I don't know who the author is. People speak of hope as if it's a delicate, ephemeral, I can never say it, ephemeral thing of whispers and spider webs. It is not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of cobblestone in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises again for another go. And I thought, that's it. That's what hope is. Hope. And I think you have to have hope. Hope in something or someone, a higher power. You have to have hope. And you also have to surround yourself with friends who make you laugh or who just love you. I often will say to Brian, I can't fathom going through this alone. So community, hope, and laughter. Humor is probably one of my attempts of dealing with life.
Mm. So I have never heard that quote, and it's uncommon for me to have never heard a quote that someone shares in the podcast. So you've done something that not many people have done before.
Yay!
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'll need you to send that to me. I'll need to read it
Sure.
again, but that might be one of the best quotes I've heard in a very long time. And just that image of, dirt on the face, blood on the knuckles, whatever it was, is just really powerful because it doesn't, right? Like hope is a very bright, positive word with good connotations, but it doesn't always feel that way. It's a
Correct.
battle sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How can I hope for the best? What if X, Y, or Z happens anyways? And I know it's a strategy to try to keep us from getting hurt or getting caught off guard, but it's a myth. What do they say? Control is an illusion. I love that statement. Control is an illusion. So here I am thinking that I can control it and I can't.
Mm. So there are people out there who might think or say, Paula, it's okay. Everything happens for a reason, and this is happening for a reason to you. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? How do you feel about that?
I strongly disagree with that.
Tell me more.
All right. Uh, my faith guides me. I'm not someone who talks about it a lot, but I was raised Mennonite. You didn't talk about your faith, you quietly lived it out, right? My faith impacts my world. And I believe in a God who uses really rotten things for good. But I don't believe there's a God up there who's orchestrating terrible things for me. That's not my theology or philosophy. Um, I think um, I think one of the absolute best podcasts I've listened to it, I've lost track, is Stephen Colbert talking to Anderson Cooper about grief. Have you seen that?
I have. It is so powerful.
It is so powerful because they talk about loss. They all lost family members at a young age. And Stephen Colbert says, basically, it's a privilege to be alive, and with life comes suffering. And so that's where I'm at. Crap happens. I don't understand the randomness of it. But I've seen amazing things. Well, Stephen Colbert goes on to say now he has changed the way he talks and deals with people because of those experiences of great loss. He said, "Do I love it? Do I wish it had happened? No." And so I think some really amazing things can happen out of our suffering. Um, but I don't know if it happens for a reason. I it doesn't make me feel any better.
I I can appreciate that, and there's a quote that pops up for me. It's another Elizabeth Kubler-Ross quote, and she said, "The most beautiful people are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen."
100%. And that's just it. I mean, the fringe benefits of the suffering is a genuineness and a realness in people that she talks about. And I think you can see it in people.
Hmm. Looking back, Paula, is there anything, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self, maybe let's just say I'm 31, so your 31-year-old self, and say, Paula, as you get older, this is what's going to happen. Your time here is limited, just like all of us, but your time is limited. Live your life to the fullest. Would you have done anything in a different manner?
Nothing major. No, I don't think so. I'm trying to think if I would have came to Canada. I would have. Don't sound like that. Um, no, I probably would have made better investments financially, but hindsight's 2020. No, I honestly feel like I don't have many regrets, which is a good thing. Um, we did lots of unique. I did. This is kind of off the subject, but right after university, after undergrad, a friend of mine and I moved to Boston. Neither of us had a job. We just packed up our car and we decided to move to Boston. And I eventually got a job, and that really affected the whole trajectory of my life, right? But I think back on it, that was crazy, right? And so I'd like to challenge people to do some crazy things that aren't maybe practical,
Mm.
but step out of your comfort zone. They make some interesting stories. Actually, I saw a T-shirt at a thrift store. It said, "Bad choices make good stories." Um, and I love the T-shirt because even bad choices. I mean, obviously, there's some serious consequences, but we're going to make mistakes along the way. We're going to make bad choices, but that again goes back to that fear of not wanting to mess up or look dumb or whatever. I guess it's about risking. We risked coming up here, and I don't regret it.
I think that most people, and I'm just speaking from my experience, most people would regret the things they didn't do more than the things that they did do.
I agree.
Yeah. So before I ask you another big question, let me ask you a maybe more of a surface question, and who knows, maybe this is deep. But one of the things that Michaela told me about you before we came up, or that was just discussed, maybe, say you love thrift shopping, you love thrift stores,
I do.
and yeah, and my mission for you, I didn't say it, but I think you took it as a mission, was to find a jean jacket, and that proved to be very difficult. But my question for you is, why thrifting? Why the thrift store? What draws you to that?
I love the thrill of the hunt.
Mm.
I never know what I'm going to find. I also like to refinish furniture. I don't know what that says to me about as a clinician, but I used to, and I still do. Brian just rolls his eyes. I lug these ugly pieces of furniture home and I refinish them. I think Michaela has that gift. Um, I like to see things restored for furniture, but I also just like the hunt. And this is going to sound really sappy, but things have stories, right? I pick up something that's 100 years old and I think about the stories. We all have stories. Um, I have an old harvest table that I'm sitting at, and I think, who sat around this? What were the stories? Where were the lives? That sounds a bit corny, but I think about that.
I don't think so. I think it's beautiful. And if I'm being honest, that's the reason I love the podcast is because long after I have a conversation with someone, it goes out into the internet or wherever it goes and anyone could listen to it between now and whenever the world implodes, because stories are everything. Stories are so important. And I just want people to be able to share their stories with the world. And I appreciate you sharing yours so far. There's still more to go. But yeah, stories are everything.
Yeah.
So, next question. When you look back at your life up until this point, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose? And why did you do that thing? And you might have multiple. That's fine as well.
The hardest thing. Ooh, that's a good question. I can't think of anything huge. Maybe moving to Boston with no safety net. The thing is, I mean, I always knew I could end up at my parents. The house was always there. But that was probably I worked in the probably the toughest parts of Boston as a child protection worker. I had to remove kids with cops, and um, that was really hard. And I chose to stay there um, because I was like, I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. So probably my first job out of university was probably the hardest thing. Um, yeah, I'm not good at um, impersonating somebody, but I remember my supervisor had this strong Boston accent, Barbara Brown, and she'd say, "Oh my God," she said, "they sent me this little girl from the hills of Pennsylvania. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with you."
That was good.
Um, I don't know about that. Yeah, but I think every day there for a while, I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. Um, but it gave me such amazing experience that I used it the rest of my life, right? Of Yeah. So that's probably the thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I also have I don't want to give you an answer, and this might not even be an answer, but I am always curious to hear about parenthood. Michaela and I want to be parents. It's not something that we brought up while we were with you, but I feel like it's fine to share with the world. The internet, everyone will know someday, but we've had it hasn't been easy. We've tried for about a year, and we haven't been successful. And to hear you and Brian talk about your journey toward parenthood was really actually encouraging and you didn't even know it. And so I would love if you could tell maybe just a brief version of that, and then I would love to hear how parenthood is hard and rewarding.
Yeah. When you said one of the hardest things, that was one of the things that came to my mind, but I didn't know if I wanted to bring it or if I should bring it up. We struggled for 4 years with infertility, and we had a failed adoption. Um, and there's no art. It just sucks because I said to Brian, it feels like we're developmentally stuck. All our friends are popping out kids, even ones that don't weren't expected. People say things. I remember saying something to my doctor about something about having my kid. And she said, well, technically, nobody owns kids. We're just giving them for, and I just wanted to go, be quiet, right? I was like, not helpful, right? And on Mother's Day and Father's Day, we always went out to eat Sunday morning. We worshiped at the equivalent Canadian equivalents of Waffle House, right? Um, so it's really painful. It's very painful and it's lonely. It's lonely. Um, and so really our first was kind of a miracle. Um, the second one was less of a divine miracle. And the third one was a gift. And we love them. But as Brian says to them sometimes, we wanted a baby. We really didn't want kids. We just needed a baby.
Hmm. Let me ask you this, Paula. When you found out that you were pregnant after 4 years of struggling to be pregnant, what was that like for you guys?
It goes back to that hope. Do I dare hope that this little thing that says positive is positive? And that's what Brian would often say, after being disappointed so many times. I mean, it's a disappointment every single month, right? It's this perpetual disappointment. And so when you finally do get pregnant, you're like, do I dare hope? Do I dare hope? Right. And so there's that love hate relationship with hope.
Mm. So now, like you mentioned, you have three adult children, Kellen, Ellie, and Ingrid, and they're
Yeah.
awesome. And we loved getting to spend time with them while
Oh,
we were up there. Yeah.
feeling is mutual.
Oh, and so I want to hear about, obviously, parenthood has its ups and downs, and there are amazing parts of parenthood, and I want to hear about those. But and you could keep this general. What are some of the harder things about parenthood?
Um, well, I think it was my mother-in-law said we should all have a practice kid, throw it out, and then start over again, right? You have lots of ideas of what parenting will be. And I'm not saying don't read the book, but don't read the book. The hardest thing for me, the two hardest things. Okay, the hardest thing for me was learning who my kid was and figuring out how to parent them, because I think the mistake that we often make as parents is we parent them exactly alike. We want things to be fair, and that's good. But what worked for number one did not work for number three, right? Um, and I think your strictest and hardest on your first one, it's your practice kid, right? My oldest feels he's a little bitter. He says he got the bum rap. Um, but yeah, so that was hard to figure out how to parent them individually. And then the second one, this is really tough for me, is probably to keep my opinions to myself. I have strong opinions or thoughts, and I think a lot of times that did not help with my relationship with my kids at times.
Mm. It I can only speak from my imagination, but I would think that it would be so hard to think, okay, I know what's best for them, or I think I know what's best for them, and I also should let them figure this one out by themselves. I can't imagine.
Yeah. And again, you go back to this fear of I want my kids to end up well. I want them to be compassionate and a contributing part, right? And I'd say to Brian, if I could just be guaranteed that they don't end up, shooting somebody at the mall, I would be great. I shouldn't have used that maybe for an example, but um, you just don't know how this experiment's going, right? And so you just have to walk in confidence and do the best you can. I'll say to my kids, I hope you do better than I do, right? I think that's any parents, you hope, right? But
Yeah. On the flip side, looking back at your childhood and how you were raised, are there things that maybe you didn't understand when you were a child about how you were parented that maybe make more sense now that you're a parent?
Um, my dad worked a lot. He was a registered nurse, but in those originally they didn't make a lot of money. So he was juggling three jobs sometimes. So he was always busy. Um, and I think when he was home, he was tired. And I think now he took his role as care as a provider very seriously. And I understand that. I think um, his work ethic. Uh, he just wanted the best for his kids. I know if there was anything we needed, he would have done it. Um, the other thing I think about is again our stories. My mom and dad's stories um, influenced how they parented. In the same way that my story affects my kids. I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes.
it does. It does. And I think like I don't know. My parents, I think, listen to most of these episodes. So if you're listening, mom and
Oh
dad,
no.
yeah, I think they do. Oh, they'll love you, Paula. But I think about how when I was little, I looked up to my parents in a certain kind of way where they protected me, they provided for me, they
Yeah.
cared for me. And I always had this subconscious assumption that they just had it all figured out. And now, as a 31-year-old, my parents were 25 when they had me. I was not planned. I was the practice kid.
Yeah.
They had no idea what they were doing, and I have
Absolutely.
I'm very empathetic toward that now because I can't imagine how hard that must have been to raise a child not knowing what you're doing.
Honestly, and that's a really good point. I think a lot of times you have to, what do they say in AA? Fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
I think so much of parenting is faking it because I have a friend who says, right about the time I have my kid figured out, they move to a new stage and I'm back at square one, right? Um, and so you're kind of just, yeah,
Yeah, you're learning as you go, doing the best that you can, and I think that's probably a lot of things in life, not just parenting.
yeah.
So when Michaela and I came to visit you guys, I brought some shirts, and we also brought Good and Plenty, which is black licorice, which I
Yeah.
can't. I don't know if people are listening and you have an opinion on black licorice, but
Go get some.
so did you guys finish that bag yet?
So Joe and Michaela brought 5 freaking pound bag, 5 pounds. And I did not open it while Joe was here because there was no need in wasting it in front of Joe. But I decided to save it for that weekend when all the kids were together for the race. And my bag broke when I was moving it. So I did have a few, but I took them and we divided them up. I have some at home, but the kids, Alicia, Kellen's girlfriend, I gave her a good size bag, and you would have thought that I gave her a bag of gold.
Well, what I was going to say is, along with the black licorice candy that we snuck through customs,
Yeah.
um, I brought Project Endure shirts. And one of the cool things for me is seeing other people wear something that I created, right? This was just once an idea in my mind. And that word endure really means a lot to me. And so, as part of the podcast, I ask everyone when you hear the word endure or endurance, what does that mean to you?
You know, that last line of that quote, as she rises for another go. And
Mm.
if I can tell a story, I don't know if Brian told you, Brian purposely wore um, your Endure t-shirt to run his race. And I saw him after the race talking to these two women. They were laughing and just having a grand old time. And I said to Brian later, what was that all about? He said, these two women were following me for most of the race. And the one woman said, I kept going END, oh, endure. And then underneath it, she was reading the t shirt. It said, do hard things. And she said, I just need you to know that that t-shirt helped us finish the race, because there was one point she said, I didn't think I could do it any longer. And she said, I just want to thank you. I wish now that we had gotten her name and address and send her one of the t-shirts that you were generously gave to us. But I just thought that's a phenomenal story.
Oh, that's really special. Yeah, I knew that Brian had sent me a picture and told me a bit about that, but I didn't know the whole thing. And hey, maybe she's listening. If you're listening to this
Maybe.
podcast, whoever you are, send us a message and we'll get you a shirt. But I love that answer. And so, Paula, this is you know the time of the podcast where I start to kind of land the plane, so to speak. We'll start to wrap things up. Before I ask you the last real big, deep question, are there any stories, thoughts, insights that I don't know you want to share before I ask you the last big question?
I don't think so. I guess I just want to say I think what you're doing is phenomenal.
Hmm.
I make the distinction before, or I make the distinction. There's doing hard things that we didn't sign up for, like infertility and cancer and disease. And then there's hard things that we choose, like running up and down steps for 25 4 hours, right? Uh, but it doesn't really matter. It's doing hard things, because hard things um, make us bigger, stronger people.
Yeah.
So I just want to give you lots of kudos for what you're doing. Um, you're married well, so she will balance you out well.
Yep.
Uh, but yeah, I just want to give you a lot of credit for what you're doing. I
Mm.
think it's
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you, Paula. That means a lot. I did marry very well. Um, I did, and she does balance me out quite a bit. And yeah, it's not easy, but it is so worth it. It's really rewarding. And had I never started Project Endure, not only would I not have done certain things in terms of running the steps or putting on events, but I also wouldn't get to have conversations like this. And this is just really special to me. And so the last question, I'm going to phrase it a bit differently for you than I would for the normal guest. And you could tell me if you want us to pause this and I can ask you the normal way if this is
Okay.
a lot. So I normally would ask, if someone's listening to this episode and they're going through a hard season, a tough chapter, what would you say to them or how would you encourage them? But for you, maybe just to make it a bit more personal, and I don't know if Kellen or Ellie or Ingrid will listen to this. If in the future, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they're going through something hard and they just want to hear something from you, what would you say to them?
I want something really profound and articulate. But tomorrow's a new day. It's amazing where I can just be full of negativity and hopelessness. And then the next day I get up. So I guess you don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. I'll get choked up. Don't give up. I'm saying that for me as much as everybody else. But also, the sun will come up tomorrow, and who knows what tomorrow will bring. Um, and I think the other thing I would add to it is we're meant for community. We are meant to be with people. And so if you're isolated, put on your shoes and walk, go downtown, say hello to your neighbor, um, go to your local thrift store. But don't isolate. That would probably be, because that's one of the first things we do is we hunker down.
Mm. I really appreciate all of that. And you sparked a thought, really a quote from Walt Whitman that I love. And he said, keep your face always toward the sunshine and the shadows will fall behind you. And yeah, I think, right, the sun rises each morning tomorrow's a new day. We're meant for community. And I think as hard as it can be sometimes, we need to push ourselves to embrace the things that you just said, because I think the easiest option a lot of times is just to shrink down and isolate. But what we want is on the other side of hard. And so it all comes full circle. Do hard things.
Do hard things. I don't know of many people who would regret it.
Mm. And so, Paula, let me ask you one wrap up question that's not as deep, not as
The Blue
hard, but
Jays are going to win. Was that the question?
that was not the question. But
Oh,
as a Yankees fan, actually, when we were with you guys, I think you were gracious to allow the television to be on in the background, and I watched the Yankees Red Sox series with Brian, and Brian's a Red Sox fan. I'm a Yankees fan.
yeah.
I have to say, it really hurt when the Yankees lost to you guys. So yeah, it was tough.
You know, I will say this. I did a couple snapshots of scores and different things, and then I'd go, that's really cruel, and I'd delete it. But you have no idea how bad I wanted to rub it in your face. But that's okay. They're both out now.
Yeah,
The
you could
Phillies
always.
and the Phillies. Aren't the Phillies out now?
Yeah, they're out too, so you could rub it in Michaela's face as well.
I know. So that leaves the Blue Jays.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see what happens. But my last question for you, Paula, is what's one thing you're looking forward to through the rest of this year, let's say?
Oh, you know, I think with my illness, sometimes I stop making goals. It's something that happens slowly.
Hmm.
So I was reminded how much I enjoyed looking forward to your visit and this race over Canadian Thanksgiving last weekend. And your question really has challenged me, you know,
Hmm.
um, to make some goals for myself, even though my future is ambiguous. Um, that's a good point. I don't have a whole lot right now.
Yeah.
So, um, unloading the dishwasher and doing laundry is not any of them.
Well, I'll say this. You can look forward, maybe on a slightly longer time horizon, to the next time you're back in Lancaster, and maybe we get to see you. And yeah. So, Paula, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for being you. Thank you for having us a few weeks ago. And I can't wait for people to listen to this.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.